This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at the Ohm of Medicine Medical Marijuana Provisioning Center of Ann Arbor, Michigan. If you live in or around the Ann Arbor area, make sure to swing in the Ohm of Medicine to see what everyone is talking about. Find directions and learn more about all the cool things that the Ohm of Medicine does over at ohmofmedicine.org, spelled O-M-O-F medicine.org. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, June 11th, 2019, and you're tuned in to episode 740 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Yesterday in Washington, D.C., a proposed amendment that we covered yesterday that would remove a federal ban on spending money researching Schedule I drugs was passed out of the House Rules Committee and will go before the entire House for a vote. The amendment, introduced by New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, would target a federal ban on funding, quote, any activity that promotes the legalization of any drug or other substance in Schedule I, unquote. That blanket ban, a relic of prohibitionist war on drugs thinking, means that researchers can only carry out studies on drugs if the drugs are cast in a negative light. That's obviously a very stupid way of conducting science. Kyle Yeager over at Marijuana Moments has a good story on this one and also reports that a different marijuana-related bit of legislation was blocked in committee yesterday that would have protected colleges in legal marijuana states from federal persecution should they allow for the use of medical marijuana on campus. Swing over to Kyle's piece for all the details there. More CBD headline madness. Yesterday, Ohio-based multi-state cannabis operator Green Growth Brands announced that it was opening up 70 new CBD-infused shops in malls across the country as part of a deal with mall giant Brookfield Properties. CNBC is reporting that Green Growth Brands will have around 280 CBD mall shops by the end of 2019. I think this is a significant story given the general hunger by mall owners for new tenants, combined with the booming hype and demand for CBD. It might not be too long before CBD is just everywhere. Don't ignore this storyline. Our final top story today has us wrapping up here in Maine, where yesterday a public hearing was held to discuss proposed rules for the soon-to-be-launched commercial adult-use marijuana sales program first voted in back in 2016. During that public meeting held in the capital of Augusta, Patricia Rossi, CEO of medical marijuana dispensary company Wellness Connection, criticized one set of rules governing who can and cannot own Maine legal adult use businesses. The voter initiative passed in 2016 that legalized adult use stipulated that a majority of a marijuana company's owners be Maine residents. Rossi testified yesterday that, as written, the proposed rules governing ownership would force her company, which is owned by multi-state operator Acreage Holdings, to sue the state. There are not many days left in the state's legislative calendar, so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the next week or so. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, the Ohm of Medicine Medical Marijuana Provisioning Center of Ann Arbor, Michigan. The Ohm of Medicine has been a sponsor of our podcasts for about as long as we've been making them, which is just about 6 years now, and we're super grateful for the support. Take a minute today and open up ohmofmedicine.org, spelled O-M-O-F medicine.org, and learn more about this very special medical marijuana provisioning center. And if you're in or around the Ann Arbor area, do yourself a favor and swing in for a visit to take it all in yourself, because they love when fans of the podcast say hello. And if you run into Mark, tell him that new stickers are on the way. I promise. One more time, that's ohmofmedicine.org. All right, time for the blitz. Florida Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried, a noted supporter of marijuana legalization, just announced the first picks for her new Medical Marijuana Advisory Committee, which will work within the government to improve the state's medical marijuana program. Ms. Freed said that the 18-person committee will meet bi-monthly to, quote, work through ways to expand patient access, increase innovation and technology in the industry, and make recommendations to the legislature and to the Department of Health's Office of Medical Marijuana Use to improve Florida's medical marijuana policies and programs, unquote. Pop over to Florida Politics to see the list of the first 18 members named, which includes Kim Rivers, CEO of marijuana company Trulieve, Sally Kent Peebles of law firm Vicente Cederberg, and medical patient Paul Messer. Yesterday, lawmakers in New Jersey announced that legislation to reform the state's medical marijuana program would not be voted on that day, as was planned, in order to give them time to work out a compromise with Governor Phil Murphy. This is different than the plans announced last week in New Jersey to grow the state's licensed industry from 12 vertically integrated marijuana companies to 120 horizontally integrated. Is that a word? It is now. You know what I mean. The legislation that was set to be voted on yesterday would roll up New Jersey's medical marijuana program to be governed by a new cannabis regulatory commission and away from the Department of Health, which runs it now. This past weekend, the Financial Times reported that the Church of England was lifting the restrictions it had placed on itself from investing in legal marijuana stocks, at least those involved with medical cannabis. The church has a massive $16 billion investment portfolio and had, up until now, avoided placing any of it with legal marijuana businesses. The church will continue to avoid any companies involved with adult use cannabis. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey signed a bill into law yesterday that will set up a medical marijuana commission tasked with studying the idea of further legalization with the goal of helping to write legislation for next year's legislative session. The commission was a compromise crafted after an actual medical marijuana bill passed through the state Senate, only to run into conservative opposition in the state House. Yesterday in Los Angeles, California, an industry group of legal marijuana businesses sent a letter to city cannabis officials urging them to crack down on illicit marijuana shops, which abound in the city. In its letter, the Southern California Coalition said that illicit cannabis was not tested and that operators of unlicensed shops enjoyed a huge unfair advantage over legal operators given the higher costs of maintaining compliance with California state cannabis law. The Ontario Cannabis Store just issued a call for licensed marijuana providers for a number of new cannabis product types, including topicals, concentrates, and edibles, which are slated to be legally available in Canadian dispensaries in November. The province has set up a website at doingbusinesswithocs.ca where suppliers can officially respond to the call for products. Not a bad story to open up in full. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. And finally for today, we have another story keeping us up in Ontario, Canada, with a rather silly new rule in the province concerning legal marijuana vaporizers that prevents retailers from actually showing vape pens to customers before they are purchased. That means that shoppers have to make their picks from photos and aren't able to handle the merchandise themselves in dispensaries. That's at least inconvenient for experienced shoppers and can be outright intimidating for new cannabis consumers, especially folks needing to be shown how vaporizers work. One dispensary owner told Global News that the new rule cut his sales of vaporizers by a third. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, The Elm of Medicine, and to all of our awesome Patreon listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the Patreon listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.